Okay, good evening, everyone. This is Sachin Karnik here. Today is the 2nd of October, 2024. We are continuing our series on the foundations of angel wing. We have an amazing book, 813-page book published. If you are interested in getting that, let me know. I will be actually loading that book as well as many other publications on the website in PDF format. They're all available for free download, so there's no charge for any of them. If you want the physical book itself, you can order it on Amazon or just wait until the next time we meet in person, and we'll have the physical books available at a much lower price that we can order because Angel Wing is the author. So anyway, having said that, I want to just do a quick recap of what we talked about last time on this workshop. We talked about the notion of a construct. You know, the idea of a construct. You know, depression is a construct. Anxiety is a construct. Even the word thought or emotion, personality, all of these are constructs. Here we're talking about the self and self-mastery. Constructs, in a nutshell, are constructed terms that refer to possibly phenomena that actually exists in reality, right? So let's try. I want to make sure we are clear, and please do ask questions. I'm going to change the format a little bit. If you have questions in between or comments, please make them, and I will be able to address them as we move along, because I know that sometimes things pop up and you may have, and I don't want you to wait until the whole thing is done. By that time, mind will be thinking something else, you know. So if you have something comes up, you want to say something, make a comment, or if you have a question, or further you want to explore, I'd be happy to. Unless it's something really tangential, then we can always hold off on that, right? So let's be clear about the notion of a construct, that this is a constructed term, meaning that we create terms, researchers, theoreticians, people in general, doesn't matter, to refer to phenomena. High blood pressure is a construct. Blood pressure itself is a construct. The economic indicators are constructs. The principles of biology and the principles in any biology textbook, like homeostasis, like aerobic respiration, it doesn't matter what it is, they are all constructs that refer to possibly phenomena that exist in actual reality. Now, which reality are we talking about? Take, for example, the cell. If you take a cell, and you know, the research in cell biology has been done by observation, and then from looking at the various chemical reactions, different principles are extracted, and then from that a construct is developed. So it can go the other way, from observation to theory, to from hypothesis to theory, and then to the overall principle being discovered that there's a bigger idea here, and then that becomes a construct, and then that's developed further. So as we mentioned, homeostasis is one prime example of that. Another example of it would be, let's say, tachycardia, physiologically, high heartbeat. You know, and then the symptoms that go along with it, the experiences that go along with it, things that, or even things like chest pain. You know, that the person has chest pain, shortness of breath. Are they having a heart attack? Are they having coronary disease? What? So ultimately, even from the layers of observation and research and empirical science, constructs are developed, and then it can go the other way. In psychology, and in sociology, and in philosophy also, there is this notion of, you know, of an intuitive notion, like, for example, mind, that there is mind, there is emotion. We have it, it's experiential. It begins with experience, and then it's expressed in language, and then it goes from there. And then there's attempt to measure that. Is there really a quantity to emotion? Things like that. So this is what is meant by construct. Now, the construct could be valid, meaning that it could actually represent reality, that in actual reality there is the phenomena that it is talking about, or it may not be. It may only be partially there. It might not be there at all. So what's an example of a construct that doesn't at all exist? Well, let's see if we can think of one. Something like a person who is simultaneously very, very excited and happy, and at the same time, exactly at the same time they're having that emotion, there is extreme depression. Is that something that we observe in reality? No, there's no observation. One may follow another, like in bipolar disorder, rapid cycling bipolar disorder, but they don't exist simultaneously. There's no evidence anywhere that they seem to be mutually exclusive. If someone is very elated and happy and enjoying and all that, well, how can they be depressed and sad and downtrodden, that just completely hurt emotionally at the same time? They may be having those experiences later on, or they may shift into those experiences. So now you'll notice with this example that you've got a theoretical construct that is not true at all. There's no evidence for that. It doesn't make logical sense also, and it's not in our experience. We don't simultaneously experience this. Although you could have the experience of fear and physical pain at the same time. Yes, we can have fear and physical pain and worry and tension, and all of these, they all kind of are rolled up into one experience. But there are certain phenomena that just do not exist together. It's fascinating to understand the fundamentals of construct validity. Because to validate the construct, it's a very intense research process. People usually in doctoral programs in sociology, social work, psychology, neurology, and other related fields, they study how to actually validate constructs. And even master's programs don't usually cover this subject. You see, so construct validity is a massive area of research at the doctoral level, usually. Now, this is some of the background for this voluminous volume. Today, I have very interesting slides here for you. And this is actually the second set of slides. So I'll have new slides every single time we do this. And we're going to do this twice a month for now. And eventually, and we'll see how Dr. Berman's schedule is, and then we'll modify as needed. But we'll definitely continue this one way or the other. So this is our second presentation, actually. And wait a minute, this was from last time. Hold on, I got the wrong slideshow up here. Give me just a moment here. What happened here? Hold on just a second. Okay, this is the one. Sorry about the delay. Give me just... Hold on one second here. All right, let's pull this up. I think this is correct. Yes. Okay, so this is where we are. This is the 2nd of October. All right. There is a primary question. Having that construct stuff that we talked about last time, a little bit of review today. I don't want to keep probing into that further because that can go on for months and months and months, and I leave that subject there for now. Hopefully you've gotten some purview of that. If anybody wants to have a much more detailed conversation, I can schedule a separate time to discuss that in much more detail if you want. And I will be creating some additional, more in-depth recordings regarding what are constructs in the future sometime. But I want to move on, into the book itself. So the introduction in the Foundations of Angel Wing book begins with these questions. This is actually the very first paragraph written by Dr. CHETANA KRIPALU. She's got about 25 pages spoken by her actually, which I transcribed it into the writing. And that is the introduction to the book. And it begins with these questions. Is the self, the sense of me, is that located in the mind? Question 1. Let's look at these questions and we'll talk about it, discuss them. Does it relate to the physical body? Or what is the relationship of the sense of me, the self, to the physical body? Is this physical body actually, is that me? Or is there something, there's a connection between the mind and the body, or the interconnection between the two that creates this notion of the I, the self? Is the self embedded in thoughts? Is there something that is within thoughts and emotions. It says thoughts here, but thoughts, emotions, memories, desires, the internal world. Is the self something that is embedded within it, yet transcendent to it? Now, we want to be very clear about these questions. And, so these are the three questions we're going to start out with today. I'm going to speak about this. And if you want to make comments, or if you have questions, or if you want to probe into anything that's coming into your mind, please do so. I'm happy to go in that direction. I'm happy to continue my presentation. And if you just want to listen to it, that's perfectly okay. All right. And then with those three questions, there is a further, more evolved question. What is the essence of self-inquiry? Right? So let's back up for a moment. The word self is a construct, right? It's an idea. It's the notion that there is something that is an individual, that sense of me. A name has been given. Now let's trace it down carefully. A name has been given by my mother, that this is Sachin. That's a name. It's a name that has been given. And then as time goes on, there's a profession, there's roles we're part of. We're part of family, we're part of social connections, we're part of all societal hierarchy. So many things, relationship structures, the 12 dimensions that we always talk about, the environment that we're living in, all of that combined together makes up my sense of me, that this is who I am. It's very interesting. But is that actually is that really the self? Or is that a constructed psychological identity that could have been constructed in some other way, but which is not actually the self? And this is an interesting question. See the questions carefully. My name, my profession, my race, the size of the body, the societal structures, the 12 dimensions that I'm involved in, and all that stuff that is there. Is that me? Or is that part of me? Or is the me, the actual me, completely separate and transcendent to this entire framework of identity, the constructed identity? I hope the question is clear. If anyone has any comments, or if it's not clear, please do ask me. All right, I'm going to make sure that the ideas are very clear. Yes, go ahead, please.
When you were saying that, what it feels like is the essence of our spirit, and for some people, self would be grounded also in their body and their personality, how they self-identify, their sexuality.
Yes.
But stripped away beyond even thoughts and body is your essence of your spirit. And I wanted to hear how you address that, or if you think that is just a religious notion.
Okay, that's a fantastic question. So, excellent question. Thank you for that question. So, it's possible to approach this fantastic question in multiple ways. Think of it this way. I'll give you some examples. A child that is born, let's say, in one of the denominations in Christianity, is born in the United States. A child is born in a denomination in Hindu tradition. A child is born to an atheistic family, and a child is born in an Islamic tradition. A child is born in a Buddhist tradition. The child is brought up with different languages. Child is brought up with family customs and culture, with religious rituals and worship, etc. Or in atheism, the families, they're really very ethical and moral, but they're have nothing to do with God and all that. The child is brought up in such an environment for years, until the age of, let's say, 16, 17, let's say up to age 18. The individual is, each of those are brought up that way. All right. That's the conditioning process. There's no question. Language acquisition, cultural acquisition. But so the acquisition of beliefs, religious beliefs, political beliefs, of any kinds of beliefs, is that coming from culture and tradition and the environment? And in the examples that I just gave you, we could say, yes, at least to some extent it is. Maybe to a large extent it is coming from there. But Christina's question is that, is there the actual spiritual or spirit self that is transcendent to the mind? That's the core of the question, the way I understood it.
Yeah.
That's the core of the question. And again, different traditions will have different ideas about this. Biblically, for example, in the Bible, there, as far as my study goes, 66 books of the Bible, and some of the other versions have more books than 66. There is not an idea of a transcendent spiritual self that is different from the mind. That is not, even when the word soul is used in the Bible, it is not used in the Eastern sense that there's a spiritual spark, something that is different from the individual personalized identity. Although certain interpretations might be that way. One would have to look at much more into the mystical teachings and theological writings and whatnot. But if you look at traditional Christianity, you will not find that notion as such, not overtly. But interestingly enough, there's a large numbers of people in both the Judeo-Christian tradition who believe in that spiritual sense, that there's a spiritual spark. Very interesting. Now, again, all of this is at the layer of belief and tradition. Same thing is true in the Eastern tradition. We've been talking about things like reincarnation and karma and the self and things like that.
Because this plays in, because I feel like the essence of what you are is what would pass on if there were such thing as reincarnation.
If there was, right? Okay, so hold that thought.
Divine spark within you
Yes.
is what is the essence of you and what would carry over beyond lifetime.
Yes, exactly. So this is where in our Angel Wing program, and Chetana and I have had many discussions about this, it is about self-discovery. If I'm trying to discover who am I, we go systematically through a path of inquiry. This is one of the ways to try to discover this. It's not just a belief, it's an actual discovery. I mean, I can believe that I have a spiritual spark, or I can believe that God's presence is within me, or that's fine. I mean, that has a psychological anchoring effect. But is there actually a transcendent spiritual, non-material substance or being that exists, and that is who I am? Now, that's a question we can pose. Now, how do we go about discovering such a question? Well, I just use myself as an example. I brought up with multiple languages and brought up in two different traditions and different cultures and stuff like that. So there's a development of the mind in many different ways. There's a certain type of development of this mind. But is that me? I mean, I was brought up speaking 4 languages at the same time. So that's fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Good stuff. But is that me? Am I restricting myself in that way? Is my sense of identity, am I restricting who I think I am just to that identity? And now there's another problem here. If a person tries to strip away that identity through some type of meditative practice that says, no, I'm not any kind of a limited being. I'm not part of this culture. I'm not part of any culture. I'm totally in the unknown dimension. That's a shock to the mind. Mind is such that it cannot remain untethered, if I'm saying that word right. It has to be anchored. The mind is something that has to remain anchored in tradition, in beliefs, in the human's culture. The moment we strip itself of that, there can potentially be phenomenal amount of fear of the unknown. Therefore, stripping belief systems out of the mind can be extraordinarily damaging and even dangerous. Stripping away belief systems is not necessarily a path to self-discovery because it can damage the mind and even the brain. But getting stuck in belief systems and considering they are the whole and soul is an extremely limited state of living. both are true. So belief systems can be perceived at their correct ontological status for what they are, where they are, in their right place, leave them alone. But to hold on to them as if they are the whole, complete, transcendental truth, potentially at least, is a massive psychological mistake. Because it's a system of emotion and thought and belief, and it's ideation. Is it the actual reality? Sachin can say, I believe there's a spiritual spark inside of me. I know there is. I'm convinced. I have read 500 scriptures from Vedanta and from the commentaries and from this and that, and I can give you the hundreds of references, and now I'm convinced that there is a spiritual spark. And that's an intellectual process. I am simply justifying the belief, trying to solidify the belief, trying to enhance and expand the belief. But that which I am believing in, is there realization? There may not be any realization of any kind. There might only simply be more and more solidification of the psychological belief itself. So self-discovery, and this is again Sachin's commentary, that's my caveat. And if some of Dr. CHETANA, I wish she was here right now, but maybe she'll join us in the future. Sachin's commentary only. Please remember, that's a caveat. The self-discovery transcends the layer of belief. Absolutely. Even we would say touching the divine, or that which is the transcendent God, or whatever language anybody's using, Brahman, God, the heaven, the divine spark, whatever the transcendent phenomena, reality is beyond the layers of personality, layers of human conditioning. That is a matter of discovery. Maybe it's a matter of grace, anointment. Maybe it's a matter of benediction. Maybe it's a matter of revelation. Maybe it's a matter of that kind of openness where the mind and the brain are so healthy that they are not functioning in a highly restrictive, reactive, and repetitive manner. But there is evolution out of those three: the restriction, the repetition, the limitation. There's evolution out of it while maintaining the layers of belief and practices thereof and ideas thereof where they need to be in terms of the societal structures for our own interactional benefit and for the benefit of the development of the mind. I know it's a mouthful, that's why I'm recording. You'll have to listen to it and think about it a little bit. There is a place for belief. A simple way of putting this: we need conditioning. Mind cannot exist with, mind is conditioned completely A to Z. If we are not conditioned, we can never evolve into that dimension beyond the conditioned mind. Impossible. How is it possible? If a child is born in this world and isolated from human society, saying we want to keep the mind open and free, don't put any human conditioning, no language, no humans contact. This was done actually. There's a book called The Forbidden Experiment. You can look it up. And that child was raised in the wild by animals, or however it was raised. There's an actual experiment done like this. And they tried to integrate that 16, 17-year-old back into human civilization. Couldn't do so. A little bit they could, not much, because the brain and everything is already evolved in a completely different way. And that really raises a corollary question. I'll just mention that here. As human beings, what type of conditioning do we want to transmit to the next generation? What type of culture, belief systems, values are to be transmitted to the next generation? You'll notice, for example, In every religious tradition, there are religious schools. The subjects are taught, but there's also religion taught. Beliefs are taught, prayers are done. You cannot do that in the public school system. Why is that? Because they want to transmit the particular religious system to the next generation. It's done in the Indian tradition, it's done in Christianity, Judaism, it's done everywhere. There's how many private schools are religious based throughout the world, and they're expensive too. It's very interesting, right? It all goes to the question of the type of belief system, values, beliefs, morals, ethics, types of behavioral patterns to be transmitted to the next generation. It raised, please, go ahead. Christina, did you want to say something? Somebody wanted to say something?
No, I don't know why it flashed on my
Okay,
phone.
that's fine. That's fine. Let's go very carefully with this. Because self-discovery, the question about the divine spark, is there actually a being that is me, that is not the body, not the subtle body, not the causal body, not the mental, psychological conditioning, and it's none of that, not all of the images inside my head that are projected at nighttime and I'm thinking about, something that is completely transcendent to that. And if that's the case, how do we access it? And that really does bring us, in a general sense, to the religious traditions, the meditative traditions, the yogic traditions. It brings us to that to try to discover what is beyond. Definitely. And this is the question of self-identity. See, when we talk about self-mastery as a construct, within that journey, or is part of that journey towards self-mastery, there is the first question of what is the self. Before Sachin can even think about self-mastery, what is it that I'm talking? Mastery of what, after all? Mastery, okay, I can balance my body, the balancing, the 12 dimensions, I can do all, let's say you do all that thing. That's the whole PTP program stuff that we've been talking about. Balance life and balance all the 12 dimensions. Assume you do all that. But at some point, there is mastery. But mastery of what? What does that mean, actually? And this is the question. Mastery to live in the relative world with absolute freedom, without getting contaminated by the conditioning, but using the conditioning in the best possible way to keep evolving further towards self-discovery. To discover or to, and again, that's what excellence is about. It's one's own excellence. And this will be explained in more detail later on, but mastery at one level means to live in the relative world without psychological fragmentation. Okay, this is at one level. But there's another level. That is the mastery of the internal mechanism of the mind. And we'll be talking about that in year 3 and 4 in the PTP program when we get to that stage. It's a mastery of the internal mechanism. But, that kind of mastery is possible when one has completely evolved out of intrapsychic fragmentation, intrapsychic disturbances, agitation, imbalances. That all has to go. Until then, there is no chance of self-mastery. Impossible. Or even getting a glimpse of the divine, or, people go to churches, but this is all more psychological phenomena. The good prayers are done. It happens like Hindu temples. If you're in Hokas and we have a Hindu temple, people go on Sundays, they do rituals, there's bells there, there's rituals done. And they feel pretty good about it, for half an hour, 20 minutes. But then they come out of that and their mind is pretty much back to where it was. There's nothing has really shifted that much. Not that you don't do that. Do it, it's okay. But there's no real journey taken into balancing thoroughly one's life so that the divine, so one can actually approach the divinity or God or whatever the higher reality may be without all of these pendulum effects diving back into the material world inside psychological fragmentation and then trying to touch the divine through the fragmentation effect, through the conditioned phenomena, which is highly divisive, highly tormented at times. I mean, still, there is that possibility that a flash of realization can happen at any time. We don't know that. I know I'm covering a lot of stuff a concentrated way, but I'm trying to slow it down because all of this stuff comes inside my mind all at one time, and I'm trying to put it in very straightforward manner because we're speaking at different levels at different times in all these programs. Right now in this set of presentations, we are trying to understand the construct of self-mastery. That's what but there's so much involved in that. That's why that book is 813 pages. That's only the first volume for self-mastery. There'll be 3 books like that. I mean, there's a phenomenal amount of research, which we're going to get into. But I want to make sure that those of us who are doing this live, are able to really have the opportunity to really contemplate on this and think through it and look at it and ask questions and probe into it, because it's not the quantity that it is how much realization we have. That is everything. It's not the quantity. Okay, other comments. I can certainly keep talking, but I don't want to overwhelm too much. I want to give everyone an opportunity. Otherwise, see, I'll tell you the danger in all this. I can keep talking about this stuff because I've been thinking in my life, this has been going on for years. But for many of you, this may be some little bit of a new endeavor. And there's a danger of giving too much information. And then you know what happens? Our mind just becomes fuzz. It just becomes fuzz. Like, my God, I cannot make heads or tails of any. We don't want that to happen.